out of all the comments that JD Vance has made, I thought this one was the most disrespectful, the most inaccurate and flippant with respect to the history of the region, and the most in poor taste. I think he also needs to have some respect for the fact that over multiple administrations within Israel and the United States, Palestinians and other factions, Palestinians were offered multiple peace deals where they would get 94%, 97%, 98% of what they wanted, and they always rejected it in favor of trying to kill Israelis. So for JD Vance to say, what's your proposal? You can't just kill your way out of solving every single national security problem you have. Well, JD, to be quite honest, if every time you sued for peace, if every time you traded land for peace, if every time you did that, it didn't work, you would probably start to come to the conclusion that people whose primary goal is to genocide your people probably just need to be killed. JD Vance made a series of comments because obviously there was a lot of people in Israel and there was a lot of people in the United States that were frustrated by this deal. There were some people that thought that this was a kind of stab in Israel in the back. I think Israel's ultimate objective is regime change in Iran, and for obvious reasons. Iran has it as one of its primary goals, wiping Israel off the face of the earth, right? So developing nuclear weapons, ballistic missiles, constantly launching terrorist attacks. They were behind October 7th. They're behind the Hezbollah attacks from Lebanon. Of course, Israel would want regime change in Iran. Israel knows that effective regime change at this stage is probably not possible. And so what they would like is constant pressure on the regime as it currently exists, because it's probably the most vulnerable it's ever been. That doesn't mean it's close to collapsing. There was another comment right here that I think also stirred a lot of controversy. He goes, he was talking about Israel. What is your exact proposal? You're a country of 9 million people. You can't just kill your way out of solving every single national security problem that you have. This is one where I think JD Vance was overly flippant. And here's why. JD Vance is a Marine. I think if people were regularly rocketing America, regularly rocketing, his home state, regularly launching terrorist attacks to where teachers had to, have machine guns escorting kids to field trips, I think JD Vance's attitude would be, we need to kill those people. I think he also needs to have some respect for the fact that over multiple administrations within Israel and the United States, Palestinians and other factions, Palestinians were offered multiple peace deals where they would get 94%, 97%, 98% of what they wanted, and they always rejected it in favor of trying to kill Israelis. So for JD Vance to say, what's your proposal? You can't just kill your way out of solving every single national security problem you have. Well, JD, to be quite honest, if every time you sued for peace, if every time you traded land for peace, if every time you did that, it didn't work, you would probably start to come to the conclusion that people whose primary goal is to genocide your people probably just need to be killed. All right. So this is, out of all the comments that JD Vance has made, I thought this one was the most disrespectful, the most inaccurate and flippant with respect to the history of the region, and the most in poor taste. Now, there's a lot of people who are like, yeah, that's right. See, we can't. No, I'm sorry. If anybody was doing to the United States what Iran, Hezbollah, Hamas, the Houthis, and various other countries had done to Israel, the United States would have made them a pavement, right? So this is one where, again, I don't think this was at all helpful. And the people cheering this on, I don't think have a healthy respect for what it means to live as a civilian, sending your kids off to school not knowing if a Palestinian terrorist is going to blow up their school bus to try to make a point. So I thought this was in really poor taste. Now, this next comment that he made, I think is, whether you like it or not, needs to be taken very seriously, because there have been some people that have rushed to this idea that JD Vance is just becoming Tucker Carlson. I don't think that's fair at all. I do not think that's fair at all. And they've gotten really angry at Donald Trump as if he has surrendered, or if he's given in, or if he's just betrayed, whatever. And JD Vance said this. He goes, Donald J. Trump is the only head of state in the entire world who is sympathetic to the nation of Israel at this moment in time. If I was in the cabinet of the Israeli government, I might not be attacking the only powerful ally that I have anywhere left in the entire world. Now, I want to point something out. That's not technically true. All right, there are heads of states in other countries that are still generally supportive of Israel. Argentina, you could argue India, other places as well. The real factor here, though, is who is actually who is supporting Israel with arms and munitions, who is actually willing to fight alongside Israel with respect to these conflicts. And the answer to that one is the United States. And so whether you like it or not, I think JD Vance is accurate that I think the Israeli government should be very careful on how they approach this. By the same token, I understand why Israel is upset specifically with respect to Lebanon. because Lebanon is at a point right now where there's a very real possibility that Hezbollah, which has had something of a stranglehold over that country for a long time now through the help of Iran, could be losing its grip on power over there, and you could actually see a significant change in the overall politics of Lebanon, which would be not only good for Israel, it would be good for Lebanon, it would be good for the region. I think it would be good for the United States. And again, I think Trump made some comments too, kind of alluding to this idea of Syria playing more of a role, which I think is a horrible idea. So it's understandable to me why Israel doesn't want to give up the ground that it's taken in Lebanon without some assurances that the Lebanese government is capable of standing on its own apart from Hezbollah. I think that is a much longer process, which is probably why Israel wants to continue to be able to conduct operations. It's going to be interesting to see what happens. You've already seen America acknowledge that Israel has a right to defend itself, and if it gets attacked, it should be able to return fire. There have been some questions as to the proportional nature of the response. So, again, if someone launches a rocket at Israel and Israel blasts their launch site, I think most people see that as, okay, that's fairly reasonable. There's some concern that Israel is not being as discriminate as they should be with respect to their strikes on Lebanon. Okay. So again, I'm just trying to be fair to both sides here. I think that the Israelis, I certainly understand where they feel like they're not really a part of this negotiation. And so if they're not part of the negotiation, well, then why should they stop conducting operations which they think are in their best national security interest? Here's the thing I kind of want to make clear on this. It is one thing to say, well, it's not in our national security interest, so we're going to do what is best for Israel. Okay. But if it is in our national security interest, then shouldn't we do what's best for the United States? There's going to be a lot of people that get mad at me for saying that. They're going to be like, how is it in the best interest of the United States for the Ayatollah to get more money and to get these concessions without actually making good on the negotiations? Well, I'm waiting to see what happens with the negotiations. If the negotiations go poorly, I will not sit here and say this was a good idea no matter what. If we don't get truly strong concessions on the nuclear side where they hand over the enriched uranium and they agree not to develop nuclear weapons with oversight and transparency the United States gets to be a part of, well, then I'm going to sit here right here now and say this conflict was not worth it. Even to the extent that we get that, I am still very skeptical that the timing of this conflict was the best course of action. I would argue that I don't think this was the best time to do it. Having said that, we did it. We've achieved some limited objectives, but if we don't achieve that one on the nuclear, this wasn't worth it. There, I said it. For anybody that's trying to get me to criticize the Trump administration on this, if we don't get the nuclear concessions that we're after, and I would go so far as to say, if we don't get some concessions with respect to the ballistic missiles and respect to supporting proxies, then it would be fair to say that we probably didn't. This was probably not worth the sacrifice that it required. Okay. Having said that, the people that are insisting that what we need is regime change, and there's a recent poll that came out that said about 39% of Republicans want there to be a negotiated settlement and about 36% want regime change. And we know Israel wants regime change. Here's all I want to say on this. Okay, but what's the probability that you get it right now? What is the probability that you get it? I think that's what needs to be taken into consideration. We can talk all day long about what we want. What's the probability that you actually get it?